Hello everyone! It's time for a set 12 updated video for Basagra. After so long with no real good support, just like random 1-2 card support here and there, we finally got something really big. Like for one, new weapons. I am so happy that we got new weapons for Basagra. It's been something I've been looking forward to for a very long time, along with a new very surprising unit that was basically a fan thing for a while, but we weren't sure was it gonna really happen or not, but it happened. We got Trickmoon, the opposite of Trickstar, overdressing. That is actually quite a surprise when they first revealed it, and I am so happy for it. So with all those big updates, I'm just so glad to do this deck profile and share it with all you guys, because yeah, I really love Basagra for one, because a Blaze Maiden, dragon related, so dragon waifu, so I just love it, and I just love its playstyle. Basically, equipping it with weapons, and of course, changing weapons depending on how you want the stance. And I love that about Bavsargra. Of course, that is going to be one weakness because they are order cards, so you don't have shield value in them. And of course, the other big weakness, because they're order cards, you're going to be shorting up your units, so just keep that one in mind. But other than that, I really love the update. The only thing I'm still a little upset about is that we don't have a new form of Basagra. I am still hoping for a new form of Basagra, because Basagra being a main antagonist unit, unfortunately kinda did not get a new form of it, and it's kinda unfortunate. And the character is also one of the main rivals to the protagonist, and also being a polar opposite to the protagonist, I kinda wish there was a new form of Basagra overall, just so we get a parallel against Jiva basically. It could have been anything, although it would have been a little more confusing at the same time based on artwork, so that might have been weird, but I would have loved a new form Basagra. Of course, they could easily fix it by having that new form being counted as the original Basagra, but oh well. What we got is what we got. What Basagra needed more was new weapons, because the weapons is what defines her basically fighting stance. But anyway, onto the deck itself. Of course, we start off with the ride deck. First off, Seal Blaze Dragon Arhisa. This is your starter that you have to run as your starter, not because of archetype reasons, you have to run it for this. Seal Blaze Dragon Carmen Dar, because when you ride it on top of the grade 0, you can Soul Blast one to add a Perhifi or Swayamba from your deck to your hand, aka the sword or the shield. So just keep that one in mind. You have to specifically run it, and it's just consistency, because one of your goals is to make sure that Basagra has both arms, one left, one right, as soon as you can. Second skill is sometimes relevant because when this card attacks plus 2k, it's a grade 1, and Basagra interacts with grade 1s or less. Next, Haribadra. So when you ride it, you can return one arm card, aka your weapons, from your drop zone back to your hand. So you grade 1 adds, discard it as ride deck fodder, and then you just return it back to your hand. Don't care for the second skill because it only gets plus 5k when your Vanguard's armed. But once you hit Seal Blaze Maiden Basagra, this is where everything kind of starts. So first off, if you arm it, it's a once per turn thing. You can soul charge one and call grade 1 or less from your drop zone. It's just nice that this is just a resource thing overall, even though your arms can be a bit overcosted, aka the original ones. But it's to combo with the second skill basically, where once per turn you can Soul Blast 2, while you have it armed with 2 weapons. You retire your opponent's front row rear guards, and this card gets plus 1 crit. Yes, the crit pressure is going to be very powerful, and with all the other support with the extra power as it is, that's going to be a lot of power with crit. And the nuking of front board is usually going to happen quite often because, yeah, your opponent's going to lose attackers, and it's just pretty powerful. So overall, it's just pretty good. But of course, the main aspect about this card is the weapons. Because the weapons define everything for this deck. So in a way, you don't really need a new form Basagra, but I wish there was a new form. But the first skill is going to be very helpful to regain your resources, because with the new updates, you are now even more short on regular units in many ways. So just being able to call back units, basically your boosters, is just very helpful. So that's it for the ride deck. To the main deck itself, of course, run your personas. Now I'm going to put this in the middle so I could start off with the arm cards. So first off, let's start off with the sword. This is the right hand weapon for Basagra. So you play on the right side by Soul Blasting 1, and when your Basagra attacks while it's armed with this, it gets plus 10k. And then if at the end of the battle you can Counterblast 2 to remove it to deal your opponent 1 damage. Counterblast 2 is a bit heavy, so that's why I'm only running 1. It does help sometimes. but there is the one inherent weakness of the deck where like you are still using a lot of resources despite getting them back. So just keep that one in mind, but it does help quite often. And if you can't tell where the art goes, here. The wings matching art is basically where it tells you which side it goes from Basaga. So, on to the next arm, starting off with the right ones, of course. I'm running the Seal Blaze Spear Arhisa, the 4 copies. This one is very important to run as 4 copies because, well, yes, you counterblast 1 to arm it on the right side of Basaga. So, I'll put it on the right side. So, the skill is that you draw a card and during the turn you can play 1 additional order of the turn. This is going to be very helpful because it helps with the dual arm Basaga. Your goal, remember, is to have both sides arms as soon as you can. Because of course, Basaga's second skill, the nuke part with the crit. And it's not restricted to your opponent being grade 3, which is also very good because if your opponent's at grade 2 and this is just high power crit, it's just nasty. And of course, the other part is that when your arm unit attack plus 10k, like I said, more power and crit, but main part is that you get to arm another card as soon as you can. In which now we go to the new arm card, Seal Blaze Hammer Saria. It looks like a mace and a hammer. I would probably call this a mace instead. But anyway, first off, when it's put as an arm, you choose one of your opponent's back row rear guards and retire and then plus 10k. So that can be pretty decent because there is ways to basically add up the number of arms that you can play during a turn. It is possible to play 3 in a turn, and it's also nice that this could nuke one of your opponent's back row cards because Basaga only nukes front row, which is why I still play this. But the second skill is that at the end of the turn, you can remove this arm card to choose a card that is right arm, but a different card name from this one from your drop zone and put it back to your hand, aka return your spear or your sword. So it's there to basically just cycle and also to nuke your opponent's back row, which is why I run this as 1 because you're not going to play this too often. Your goal is usually always the spear and sometimes the sword. The mace or sometimes hammer. The mace or actually hammer is just there for like other things that you want to do just in case. So that's why I'm only playing it as 1 of. And then to the left arms card. So first off, we start off with the shield, combining art. So the shield is searchable. That's why you play as a 1 of. Same thing with the sword, which is why it's also 1 of. So you play it by counterblasting 1 and arming it on the left side of Basaga. The skill is that once per turn, when it's armed and your Basaga is being attacked, or any of the armed units, depending on the deck, because who knows, that can still change, your arm unit gets plus 10k power until the end of that battle. So basically it becomes a free 10k shield every turn, which is why you run this, because that's just very helpful. Especially with the number of arms that you have to run with no shield, this is just very helpful for defensive value. And obviously you're going to be searching this every single time. And then finally, for the last arm, I'm playing 2 copies of the Axe Travestar. You put it on the left side of Basaga and it's free, so that is a very good thing. And then, so during the battle that your arm unit attacks, your Vanguard gets the Battle Door effect, which is going to be pretty nice because high power plus crit plus a little guard restrict is pretty nasty there. But the second skill makes it even better, where at the end of your turn, you can counterblast 1, put this card to your drop zone, choose a different named left-handed card, and arm it to your Basaga. This is why you want to run this as 2 of, and you want to actually arm this one instead of the shield as soon as you can. The shield is more of a backup. So the purpose of why you want to arm this one is because early game aggression, and then after that 1 turn, you just basically switch to the Swayamba. And that's basically why you want to run this at 2 up, because you want to see this as soon as you can and you don't want to risk it at the damage zone. And there are ways to search out the order card, which is also very nice as well. That's why I run this as 2. So 1, to not risk losing at the damage zone, and 2, you want to arm it as soon as you can. Once you get at least once armed, you're good and set. So yeah, 2 new weapons for Basaga, but mainly this one's the good one and this one is just there as a tech option. I'm not running the gun anymore because the gun is overcosted just for a triple drive, and I'd rather be using the sword skill than the gun. So that's it with Basaga with her arms. To the support cards. So first off, I run 3 Shitati, where on place from hand, you can Soul Blast 1 and discard a card while your Vanguard's Basaga. Search your deck or drop zone for 1 arm card and put it to your hand. Of course, if it's from deck, you shuffle it. Now, I run this as a 3 of because, yes, you can search up for any arm card. The only issue is it's a bit overcosted because you have to Soul Blast 1 and discard a card. But the key point is that it's consistency searcher. So that's the key point. And it has an additional second skill where you can counterblast 1, put an armed card to your soul to give it plus 5k and draw a card, which is sometimes useful if you don't want to be losing your arm cards, but since your arm cards are basically just going to remove themselves anyway, usually that's not an issue. The only thing is, both resources are very valuable for the deck. Counterblast and Soul Blast is very valuable, and that one discard can be a bit hurtful as well. But the fact that you can consistently search for any of your arm card is just very helpful, especially if you really need that spear or the axe. Because, of course, your main play is usually you start off with spear with the axe, and then the axe will rearm the shield. That's your main play. So it's just there for consistency search, but other than that, there's really no other better options than this. This is actually quite helpful for just consistency search. There is Shabda, where you can call it from drop zone when you arm a card, but once again, Counterblast, and Counterblast has been used more than Soul, because Counterblast is harder to get than Soul in this deck, and it's a huge weakness. Next, for another new card, I play Davista, which on place you can Soul Blast 1, look at top 7 cards of your deck to choose one card with the Dress Boost ability. There's actually two cards with Dress Boost now, not just Trickmoon, aka the new overdress for Trickmoon, along with an arm card. One of them goes to hand and the other one goes to the drop zone. This is just very helpful. Even if it's just top 7, you are very likely to get at least one card. And it's just more consistency search and basically your resource engine. The key point is that you can put a Trickmoon to your drop zone. That is a very good key point right there, because just by being able to put the Trickmoon in the drop zone, you can activate Basagra's skill to call back the Trickmoon, which is what you really want. And the fact that you can also add an arm card on top of it by chances is also very helpful, because that is consistency search, and with a good number of arm cards, you will be likely to get one. Usually, as long as you get any one arm card, it should technically be fine, because as long as you have the spear and you can play a left-handed one, you are basically golden. But anyway, second skill. When this card attacks a grade 3 or greater, while you have 2 or more arm cards, plus 10k. So 20k beater as well, which is very helpful because you can be lacking boosters in this deck. Searcher plus being a 20k attacker. Just really good, that's why it's a 4 of. And now, before we go to the grade 1 lineup, because there's only one unique grade 1 in this deck, we're going to start off with the Trickmoon, the grade 0. So Trickmoon is basically the partner of Basaga, so of course you have to run 4. When placed in the back row center from drop, you can countercharge 1. That's why you want it from the drop zone. So Basaga can call it to the back row center, so Trickmoon can support her. Because the second skill, in the Dress Boost, that's the key word, when this card boosts any unit, the boosted unit gets plus 10k power for each of your Vanguard's armed cards, aka it has to be Basaga's armed cards. Basagra's partner, of course, giving more support to her basically. And with 2 arms card, that is plus 20k right there. With the extra additional arm of your right hand, they all get plus 10k. That's plus 30k power right there for Basagra. So usually when this card boosts without Persona on Basagra with both arm cards, that's 48k with 2 crits usually. And that is very powerful right there. Now add the extra new left-handed axe with the guard restrict. Yeah, that can be very nasty. So yeah, you have to run this as 4 of, especially for the new card, which this is going to overdress on top of the Trickmoon, Fire Lord, the evolution of Trickmoon. So first off, the first skill is not restricted to being overdress, where this card basically has resist, cannot be chosen by your opponent's card abilities. Very nice. But the second skill is that when placed by overdressing, when it's placed by overdress, you can counterblast 1. So choose a total of 2 arms cards from your hand and or drop zone. Arm one of them to your Vanguard and put the other one to soul. This is key because not only you're increasing your soul, but you also change your arm card. And that can be very helpful because depending on what stance you want, this is of course going to be a decent resource engine. And that 1 extra soul just really helps out right there. The only thing is it is still counterblast. Luckily Trickmoon does the counter charge. So that can be a hindrance or not right there, since sometimes that counterblast can be very useful for basically your sword. But one other key point about this card is that this basically potentially gets you a 3rd arm card in a turn, because your spear gives you 1 additional one and this basically gives you an additional one. So that can be 3 arm cards in a turn. But anyway, second skill, in a Dress Boost. When this card in overdress state boosts, your whole entire front row gets plus 5k power for each of your Vanguard's arm cards. Yes, the boost is technically weaker than Trickmoon, but the key point is that it supports the whole entire front row. And because this is now overdressing on top of Trickmoon, you are now having less rearguard units to boost with. So this part of letting you boost your whole entire front row plus 10k is just very nice, and 10k is more than 8k by by the way. If you can constantly call a bunch of Trickmoons, sure, that's nice, but you really just use this just to be mainly behind the Vanguard to overdress on top of the Trickmoon, of course, from there, because that's the main support side. Your Basaga is always going to be attacking first usually, because she's the heaviest attack, and this is of course going to boost the rest of it. So overall, this is just pretty nice. It's not like the super best type of support, but it's really big enough that it actually changes up the deck quite a bit. And it's just cool to see overdress Trickmoon being a polar opposite of Trickstar. We finally got a Arena Dark. And then finally, the 4 PGs, trigger lineup, OT because you can't give up the OT, and then of course 8 crits, 3 draws. You can run fronts if you want, but I find draws more helpful because it draws your pieces, and 4 heals, 2 of them being counter heals. So that's it for my new deck profile of Basaga updated from set 12. What do you guys think of it? What other type of cards would you recommend playing in the deck? I just gave you my deck list, and so far I've been really liking it. At most I was thinking just this card right here and maybe the Axe. But other than that, this deck has been operating pretty well and I love it. I just love that we finally got overdress Trickmoon. Unfortunately, still no new form Basaga, but we got 2 new weapons, and I just love it that we got weapons because that's the main part of Basaga that she's been really needing, and I'm just so happy that we did. But other than that, the deck is still overall fun. I love Basaga, and it's so good to see finally good unique support than just one random card here and there. And yeah, this is just overall cool. I just overall like it. But other than that, that's just for this, and see you all next time.